from
Tell Africa.
Tell Africans.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
We are the online television for Africans in Switzerland. So if you want to reach Africans in Switzerland, Tell Africans is one spot. I don't understand the position in this argument. I want to find out. Today we are talking about the issue of migration and the closing of borders and things like this. Where do you stand in this case?
Well, I stand against the closure of borders and for the rights of migrants, of course. I stand in particular against the current policy of the EU in the central Mediterranean, which is what we were discussing this morning. A policy which essentially is articulated as a two-pronged strategy. Right? On the one hand, they have been trying to criminalize civilian search and rescue. On the other, they have sought to collaborate more with the Libyan Coast Guard and to make them pull back migrants towards Libya. And this in the desperate attempt to close off the Mediterranean to migrants once again. This, however, is a policy that comes at a tremendous human cost. It's also a completely unsustainable policy, as have the last 30 years of European policy shown. Right? Each time a particular area of the border is closed, it's just a matter of time for migrants to shift to another area and for the border to be reopened. So policies of closure do not lead to an end of unwanted migration. It just leads to illegalization and more violence.
Yeah, the priest just said that he thinks that Europeans are also part of this, that Europeans are bringing their problems to Africa. Do you think this is true?
I think this is absolutely true. And I think that, to take a step back again, I think that what we are seeing, the current policy that we are seeing, the current violence that we are seeing, is the symptom of a broader problem, which is a mobility conflict. The desire of migrants to access European territory, often because they are absolutely forced to by the situation in their countries, and the desire of European states to seal themselves off to their movement. So these are completely conflicting interests that seem unreconcilable. Now, in any conflict, what do? You try to understand what are the interests and imperatives of each party, and you try to find a way to de-escalate. Well, this means, on the one hand, a true commitment to tackling the root causes of forced migration, at least. Again, I'm against the idea that migration is a problem as such, but it is certainly a problem that people are forced to flee their home countries, right? That is a problem. So we need to tackle that, but we also need to tackle the reasons that push European states to absolutely seek to seal off their borders. And here, just as Father Mousse rightfully pointed just before, Europe is in a sense seeking to seal its borders because European states can't get an agreement amongst themselves to share the allocation of migrants and refugees across European territory. And because this impossibility of reaching an agreement inside of Europe is leading to crisis and conflict inside of Europe, Europe is trying to export its own crisis onto, in particular these days, African soil.
Good. Thank you very much. In this case, do you think Africans, like we in Africa and Africans in Europe, do you think we also have a role to play?
I think you have a fundamental role to play, absolutely. Starting by a first and immediate role. Migration policies today are fundamentally non-democratic. They're non-democratic because if democracy, the basics of democracy, is that people decide on the laws and policies that govern their lives. Migrants today, by definition, non-European migrants at least, have no say in the definition of the policies that concern them. The European migration policies that govern, enable or restrict their access to European territory. If we want to resolve the mobility conflict, once again, the first thing we need to do is to take into account the voice of migrants themselves and make them part of the definition of the policies that concern their mobility, their work, their livelihood.
Thank you very much. What would you like to tell Africans in Africa and also in Europe?
That's a very challenging questions. I would say, stay strong. We need to think of this together. I think that we are together trying to fight for a world of global justice that has many different dimensions. And this fight is only possible if we lead it together.
Thank you very much.